Let's give a big round of applause for Secretary Ernest Moniz, the nation's 13th Energy Secretary.
Well, thanks, Melanie, but I'll come back and mention a few things that you've done as well. But first, let me thank Stanford for hosting this, and Sally, I know, has played a big role, and also my good friends here. Again, George Schultz has been an incredible friend and advisor across a broad set of issues, and as you all know, that includes clean energy, in which he's been a major player and a major supporter of innovation, which is one of the major themes this week here in California. Steve Chu, Secretary Chu, I don't know where he is now. Now he's back there. I'll come back to some of the things with Steve and C3E. In fact, what I really want to do is to give a little bit of the history. I don't know if you've already done it, but whatever the case, I'll give my version of the facts. But really, Steve Chu and Dave Sandelow, I think, really are the ones who drove the creation of the Clean Energy Ministerial first, announced at Copenhagen in 2009, and then Christina Johnson, who was the undersecretary. At least my understanding of the history is that that first SEM meeting in 2010 had 5 women ministers in attendance, which I believe remains the record. And I think they came together, and one way or another, basically the C3E idea got established. And then in Abu Dhabi, in SEM 2, was a panel that I think is where things really took off. Melanie was part of that panel. I believe Jean Chu, who may be here at lunch, I'm not sure, Steve, was part of that panel, and others, of course, an international panel. All I can say is when Melanie came back to MIT, she was tremendously excited. And then we approached Department of Energy. Again, Steve and Dave Sandelow, very supportive. Others, Caroline McGregor, who's, I believe, here. Roberta Marley. Oh, no, that's Robert Marley. I'm sorry. Who I believe is also here somewhere. Excuse me, Bob, wherever you are. But they were just equally excited, and that started the Symposium series and the awards and the ambassadors that we've had. And all I can say is that when I think back to that first meeting now in 2012, it's the first symposium at MIT, I just never forget the enthusiasm and the networking that took place at that meeting, and that clearly just meant this really had to continue with the continued enthusiasm that I think we are seeing. I might also add, I'm sorry to go back to these times, but I see Lara Pierpoint, my last PhD student, who spent an extra 2 years as she was doing many things, including helping with the C3E establishment. Sarah Kearney, I just saw this morning, another who was part of that initial group. So I think what's great is seeing the excitement, the new awardees, the new ambassadors, the international ambassadors, and yet this continuity of particularly our women in clean energy who continue to advance this. So I also wanted, by the way, one last call out I want to make or maybe 2 last call outs. One is to Raiza Ledesma, who I think did the great work with the volume, the C3E volume that I'm extremely impressed with, and also I think there's a Saudi postdoc, Dr. Malik Al-Nouri, who's here someplace, perhaps. And here, great, and part of another program which the MIT's first woman president, Susan Hockfield, was instrumental in putting together with Saudi Aramco. to have Saudi women scientists and engineers come as postdocs, and another major development. And actually, I should have said that Susan Hockfield in those first days as well, not surprisingly perhaps, took an enormous interest in our advancing the C3E. But now, again, seeing this in greatly increased international flavor, international ambassadors, I think is just a fabulous evolution of this. And I think it is really important for us to continue in what we are doing here in the United States, but also to see this initiative growing in so many of our partner countries. So let me just now switch a little bit to the reasons we're here this week in San Francisco to host the Clean Energy Ministerial, the 7th meeting of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and the first meeting of the Ministerial of Mission Innovation in this post-Paris period. I'm going to be very brief so that we can have discussion and questions. But I think a very important part of the Paris meeting, COP21, was the way innovation was put forward as central to being able to meet the goals of Paris. I think it was a much stronger focus than had been the case in the past. And we know that the Paris Agreement, the Paris Accord, was a very important first step, but we cannot forget that it was a first step and that substantially increasing ambition will be needed with time as we go forward. That will call for multiple dimensions of innovation. Technology innovation, clearly, systems innovation, policy innovation, business model innovation, public understanding, innovative approaches to public understanding, innovative approaches to bringing energy services to the, unfortunately, too many underserved throughout the world. Innovation in bringing new energy services in developed economies. As the technology evolves, as business models evolve, how will new services be generated? Innovation in providing resilience in our energy system along with low carbon. So all of these are critical, and I want to emphasize that means that just about every discipline that is pursued has a critical role to play, an important role to play in the clean energy transformation. I do have a particularly soft spot for clean energy technology innovation and the cost reduction that will stem from it because the progress in that dimension will just makes innovation in all the other dimensions much easier. So certainly technology innovation is critical, and we've come here to the Bay Area for the 7th meeting of SEM, the first meeting of Mission Innovation, which is the countries dedicated to doubling energy R&D over the next 5 years, because clearly this is an area known for innovation, known for translating innovation into household names. Google would be a neighbor here, for example, that would exemplify that. Now we need to convert clean energy into innovation, into transformation. And that fundamentally is the job of C3E, of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and of Mission Innovation. And so I'm looking forward to getting a lot of additional momentum this week in pursuing this. And, obviously, in the context of our administration, now with less than 8 months to go, helping establish further institutionalization of all of these as key elements of the road from Paris. So thank you very much, and I'll be looking forward to a discussion.
You mentioned Mission Innovation, and hugely important. 20 countries have joined Mission Innovation, and the ministers are here in San Francisco this week. Could you describe a little bit more about what Mission Innovation means to the United States and what our portfolio, how we envision that doubling of clean energy R&D at the Department of Energy?
Well, first of all, I think we are leaving a lot of innovation untapped. And again, an example I've used many times, and with Arun here, particularly appropriate, and I think Cheryl Martin is here as well. Cheryl Martin is there, and maybe Ellen Williams is here as well. I'm not quite sure. But whatever the case, ARPA-E is a good case study in which every indication of success in its somewhat different way of doing business is there. From nearly 200 projects now being finished, 36 companies, $1.25 billion of private funding, 10 commercial products in a short time suggests a very effective way of doing business and moving clean energy forward. And yet, last year's open call could lead to funding of just somewhere between 2 and 3% of the proposal. So, I mean, it's anecdotal, but it suggests that we have a lot more capacity, and if we can open that innovation pipeline with increased support. In ARPA-E's case, we propose more than tripling the ARPA-E's budget. That is clearly going to help accelerate the clean energy technology changes that we need in this country. But secondly, the fact is, you know, putting aside discussions, which I'm happy to not put aside, of course, in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation, the fact is the Paris Accord means that every country in the world, more or less, is going to be pursuing a low-carbon agenda. And that means even more rapid development of multi-trillion-dollar markets globally to meet our economic, environmental, and security goals. And frankly, we and all the other countries in mission innovation, by doubling down on our R&D, we want to get a good place at the table for helping provide those technologies and those services globally. So it's also an economic imperative, and you know, frankly, if we end up making the choice of not doing this, our friends and partners will not. So I think we need to have a good friendly competition as well in this arena to get this clean energy transformation globally.
Mr. Secretary, we are nearing the end of the administration. We both worked together at the end of the Clinton administration as well. I think that we spent a lot of time trying to keep the lights on in California at the end of the Clinton administration. One of the last things we did. Could you articulate for people here what you think the most significant accomplishments have been in the last 3 years and what your priorities are between now and January 20th?
Well, first of all, I think one of the priorities is to really, again, give a good, strong push for the Clean Energy Ministerial, and perhaps even more so because it's new, the mission innovation direction. That includes working with Congress. And I have to say that, look, we all know that this is it's a tough year in terms of total budgets because of the flat budgets. But within that, I do want to emphasize, first of all, the President, in his budget proposal to Congress, did, within the constraints of appropriations, propose a 21% increase. Obviously, the track towards doubling. I don't think anybody at this stage expects we are going to see that kind of an increase this year. However, I remain optimistic because, first of all, new things are always hard to get through the Congress, frankly, in the first shot. One might say, particularly if that happens to be an election year. But the reality is we have seen very, very strong bipartisan and bicameral support for the innovation agenda. If we look at the Senate, just in the last month, the Senate Energy Bill and the Senate Energy Appropriations Bill both specifically called out this innovation agenda, I might say, in a very positive way. So I think the groundwork has been laid. And then if I take ARPA-E as our example, the fact is in both the Senate and House floor debates, there was bipartisan support to raise the appropriation to $325 million from $290, and that was, again, a bipartisan effort in both chambers after the bills had left committee where they had to juggle various things. So I think there's a lot of good signs. Now, clearly, the next administration is going to have to keep up this pressure and this work with Congress to move forward the innovation agenda. So anyway, that's one of the major issues. I'll mention another one, which is, I think, connected to this, and in which your office plays a particularly important role, the Quadrennial Energy Review. The Quadrennial Energy Review has been, I think, a new way of approaching the development of government-wide energy policy. It's proved very effective in opening up a constructive dialogue, again with Congress, bipartisan. It's had 14 recommendations already put into law, and more are waiting if the next energy bill gets through. So advancing that is important. But in particular, if I look at all of the credible scenarios to meet our deep decarbonization aspirations or goals for, say, mid-century and beyond, they always have two common elements. One is strong progress on the demand side, energy efficiency, and second is of all the sectors, the most rapid decarbonization in the electricity sector. I mention that in this context because, again, towards the end of the administration, one is the next installment of the QER will be an end-to-end look at the electricity sector, which again is critical for decarbonization, including technology, but also including things like how are we going to do valuation of things like electricity and grid services in a world with new technology, with distributed generation and other kinds of new developments. And similarly, running through the tape on our aggressive energy efficiency standards approach is also part of what we very much have in mind for the rest of this year. So again, those are two strategically chosen areas because of their role in decarbonization.
Great. I think we have just a few minutes left. Love to take some questions from the audience. I think that there are microphones out and about. Are there any questions? Marilyn?
I was just there last week.
The QER, you're doing background papers now, and I know that for the first time I've seen an expanded section on environmental equity. In the discussion about the role of women in science and technology here, we mostly talk about the need, all hands on deck, we've got to have all the creative juices flowing in order to tackle this big problem. But there is also an equity issue. I'm wondering, are you going to attempt to in any way characterize the role of women in the workforce and the implications of alternative future scenarios in terms of what they might play out for the role of women as either beneficiaries or paying the price for what might be coming ahead? Have you thought about that?
We are now.
Yes, actually.
Actually, Marilyn, I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about that in the QER context. We are doing that in other contexts, but I think that, seriously, that's worth a discussion. But more generally, I might say as you know, we have emphasized strongly both the women in clean energy, and I might just add minorities in energy as well. Indeed, for those who, it might be an interesting anecdote. Sorry, this is a little bit deviating from your question, but I was at a hearing in the House, and hearings are not usually associated with tangible progress in real time. But in this case, it was because Congressman Rush asked about minorities in energy, And in my answer, I pointed out the Women in Clean Energy program, and I said, why don't we do something like this for minorities in energy? And so it was born, and this remains very important. The other thing that we're doing, and I do want to follow up on that, on your question for the QER, but the other thing I just want to add is that we brought in some excellent people from labor, jobs, et cetera, including the first executive director of the Blue-Green Alliance, Dave Foster. And we have worked extensively to try to understand better the jobs, employment structure in the energy industry, because frankly, what's available has been rather thin. Certainly, things like government statistics do not reflect what we would call energy jobs. It's just not part of the category. So we're trying to work to understand the situation, and then I think that will feed into the idea of how we get, frankly, a more appropriately sourced set of human talent.
Great, thank you. One more question, Kateri?
Hi, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for coming today. We really appreciate this. It's fascinating and very exciting times. I wonder on the mission innovation side, and you've talked a lot about what governments are doing, the other side of that is the private sector breakthrough coalition. And I know that you can't be intertwined because it's government, but how are you approaching that private sector commitment to investment, and how are you making sure that that goes forward, or are they making sure that that goes forward, even if governments are struggling on getting as much as quickly as they want?
Well, first of all, maybe not everyone may be fully familiar, so just 30 seconds of background. So when the Mission Innovation 20-country coalition was announced on the first day of COP21, simultaneously a Bill Gates-led group of 28 investors from 10 countries called the Breakthrough Energy Coalition was announced. And the idea is that the governments with the increased investment, will provide more investable opportunities, if you like, for a set of investors who are prepared to combine several characteristics. One is patience, the recognition that investing in the energy space, there has been some experience in this part of the country in misestimating the time it takes for energy investments to mature, to scale. Secondly, to make the investments with considerable risk tolerance. And third, to be prepared for the most promising technologies, at least, to use the rather impressive resources of this group to make the big capital investments, if you like, to go end to end into scaling in the marketplace. So announcing these at the same time was very, very critical. But as Kateri said, those investors, however, at least for us, I won't speak for all of our other partners, but for us, they cannot have privileged access to information. It's got to be open to all investors. So what is the relationship? Well, first of all, tomorrow we will be discussing that with them. But I'll give you an example. We have had 6 working groups of mission innovation working, and I saw Bob Hamilton there. Canada, for example, has played a lead role in a road mapping working group. I think I got that right, Bob, right? And the idea is that how can the countries, and potentially the countries and private sector, work together, not in reinventing wheels, but in pulling information together on specific technology road mapping that can lead to transformational research and transformational investments. So that's an example of what we are still working out. But I want to make it very clear. We've had 6 working groups coming together. We hope to now really establish the enabling framework for MI this week. Okay, because now we're at the beginning. The same will be true with the investors, Bill Gates and several others, reporting on where they stand in terms of developing their investment vehicles to reflect the common commitments that we made.
So thank you all, and let's thank the Secretary for his remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.